On Monday, 9th April 1888, 28-year-old John Jackson, born Charles Wood Firth, but also known as Edward Graham, Charles Williamson, George Wood, and a variety of other aliases, appeared before the Salford Quarter Sessions, charged with housebreaking at Oldham. He'd stolen a money box, tuppence, and a signature stamp belonging to Alfred Poynter, a Salvation Army captain. Charles Wood Firth was born in Nottingham in 1859, the son of a plumber, but he wasn't really interested in working. Instead, he became a career criminal. The first serious charge he faced was robbery at the Bristol Bank, where his father was caretaker, but he was found innocent of the crime. He went on to steal horses at Wakefield and was sent to prison, but broke out and changed his name to Jackson from Firth. However, when not in prison, he worked as a plumber in both England and Wales. That night when he tried to rob Poynter, Police Constable Crowther had lain in wait at the property. Jackson was known to have a penchant for stealing from the homes of Salvation Army members. The constable heard noises at the front door, but the perpetrator couldn't gain access, so footsteps were heard going round the back. Then the kitchen window was smashed. Jackson began searching for the loot, and after he had a few things, the constable pounced, and after a short struggle, he was handcuffed. At court, he pleaded guilty to the charge and was imprisoned for 6 months at Strangeways prison in Manchester. One of the staff at the prison was a matron, Miss Elizabeth Little, who lived in a house on the site. On the morning of Saturday 19th May 1888, she could smell gas in one of her bedrooms and reported it to the governor, Major John William Preston. Knowing Jackson was a plumber to trade, he was tasked with fixing it, so was accompanied to the house by Assistant Warder Sutherland on Monday 21st May. Sutherland, however, was needed elsewhere, so Assistant Warder Warder Webb went with Jackson to the house. By 5 o'clock that afternoon, the leak still hadn't been fully fixed, but it had been stopped, and told her the two of them would return the following day to finish it off, which they did. On that Tuesday afternoon, the matron saw the two of them in her kitchen, then in her bedroom at around 20 to 4. Then they went back to the scullery where the gas meter was. Jackson did something to it, then the pair went back upstairs. The matron waited in the kitchen for around 5 minutes, then went into her living room, which was directly below the bedroom where the gas leak had been. She then heard a noise as though someone was pulling furniture across the floor, so she rushed upstairs and turned the handle of the bedroom door. It wouldn't open. She rattled it another couple of times and called out, "Open the door," and someone in the room called back, "It's all right." She knew something was wrong, so darted out of the house and into the yard, where she met Assistant Warder William Young. He'd been on his way to the house to relieve Webb, so he could have his tea break. He rushed up the stairs, but try as he might, he couldn't get the door to open, so called for the assistance of 2 other warders. Finally, they got into the bedroom, where they saw 45-year-old Webb on the floor, his head lying on his left arm, and there was blood near the window. Jackson was nowhere to be seen. A chair had been moved and sat below a hole in the ceiling. When asked if the hole was there before, the matron replied no, and said the two seemed to be on friendly terms while carrying out the work. Assistance was called for Webb, who by this time was unconscious. Dr. Charles Braddon, the prison doctor, examined Webb and found a 2-inch laceration to the back of his head that was so deep it had reached the bone. Slipping in and out of consciousness, Webb asked, "Where are my boots?" Then asked, "Where is the plumber?" before falling unconscious once more. When he came round again, he was asked where Jackson was and replied, "Here in the room." He was also asked how he got the injury, to which he replied, "I fell." He then lapsed into unconsciousness again and was taken to the prison hospital, where he died just after 6 that evening. He left behind his wife, Grace, who died in March 1926, and a 6-year-old daughter. His funeral took place on Saturday 26th May, and he was buried in West Cemetery in Salford. Dr. Braddon performed the post-mortem and found Webb had no other wounds apart from his head wound. His skull had been fractured, and a large effusion of blood at the base of the brain was caused by the ruptured blood vessels from the wound. Braddon believed a fall wouldn't have caused the injury, which was proved right, as a heavy hammer was found by Warder James Salmons on the roof of the matron's house in the lead guttering. He also found a chisel near the chimney, as well as a hole in the roof. Jackson had attacked the warder when he bent over to smell where the gas had been leaking from, but he later claimed he only wanted to stun him. Then he escaped through the ceiling of the roof space by climbing up a cupboard, removed slates from the roof, then shinnied down a pipe and made good his escape, unseen by anyone. Manchester City Police were informed of the escape, but not the seriousness of it until 4 hours later. One of the city's most noted officers, Jerome Caminada, became involved in the case, and a manhunt ensued. He informed Oldham Police, as Jackson was well known as a housebreaker in the area, and within 24 hours, reports were coming in that houses were indeed being broken into. Mr. Taylor of Park Road reported that he was missing a worsted Chesterfield overcoat, a white linen jacket, a brown tweed vest, a half-gallon of porter, and some cigars. The house of Salvation Army Captain Thomas Wood, who lived at 8 Cromwell Street in Oldham, reported that a tweed coat and £11 was missing, along with keys to the Salvation Army citadel. He'd only become aware of the robbery when a neighbour roused him from his deep sleep. Police later found the empty bottle of porter and partially smoked cigars at the citadel, with the keys being found in the fireplace. The search for Jackson widened. Reports came in that the overcoat he'd stolen was found in front of the Jolly Carter beer house in Lees Road, while a pawnbroker informed the police that Jackson had pawned another overcoat and gave them a good description of him and the clothes he was wearing. Several wrongful arrests were made following this information, and Jackson remained a fugitive for weeks. He was finally caught in Bradford following a string of robberies, including his final one at Bradford Moor on Monday 11th June. He was identified by his brothers, Alfred and Harry Firth. Upon his arrest, he told police, "I am the man. I am glad you have copped me, for I have had a hard time of it." On Wednesday, 18th July 1888, his trial took place at the Manchester Assizes, where he pleaded not guilty, before Mr. Justice Sir William Grantham. The prosecution case was led by John Addison, Queen's Counsel, while Jackson was defended by Mr. Wharton. In court was Grace Webb, who identified the knife found on Jackson and said that it belonged to her husband. Throughout the trial, Jackson sat in the dock with his head bowed. It took the jury just 6 minutes to find him guilty of the murder of Webb. The judge asked him why the death sentence should not be passed on him, and he replied in a barely audible voice, "I never intended to strike Webb." The judge donned the black cap and pronounced the death sentence on him. Although a petition for a reprieve had just under 20,000 signatories, the Home Secretary, Henry Matthews, dismissed it, and at 8 a.m. on the morning of Tuesday 7th August 1888, Jackson was hanged by executioner James Berry. Until the end, Jackson protested that he'd only meant to stun Webb.